Well, dear colleagues, dear friends, and especially dear friends of Ton van Vlimmeren, welcome to the presentation of the book Living Libraries, the House of the Community Around the World. This is the book. It looks, feels, and weighs like a very substantial contribution to the library world, and it is. It really, really is. Over 30 colleagues from all over the world contributed to this book. It is a substantial and important gift to our community and, in fact, to all our patrons who will benefit from you reading the book. It is packed not only with great stories and interesting background information, but also with hands-on suggestions how to apply these ideas in your own library and to strengthen the communities in and around your institutions. My name is Theo Kemperman. I'm director of the Rotterdam Public Library and your host today. I'm not only a colleague of Ton van Vlimmeren, but I'm honored to be his friend as well, accompanying him during various international conventions, and very honored to do this presentation today. In normal times, this presentation would have been part of Ton's retirement party as our colleague ends his illustrious career at the Utrecht Public Library and with a lot of people in person in the theater of the beautiful new Neude Central Library. As we know, the situation is otherwise, but as a result, I'm so glad that many of you can attend this presentation as well, from New Zealand to Chile and from Finland to South Africa. Welcome to you all. Before we start, I would like to ask you to all to keep your microphones muted and to place any questions or comments in the chat. This session will be recorded, so if you don't want to be in the picture, please turn your cameras off. After this session, the downloadable version of the book will be available on the special book page of the Utrecht Public Library's website. The recording of this session will also be posted there, along with answers to questions from the chat, so you can put your questions in the chat. We'll use the coming hour efficiently, but we won't rush. We have 7 short interviews with some of the authors spread across several continents, and of course, Ton will speak as well. I apologize to the many authors, many online now, who shared wonderful stories in the book, for whom we don't have time for an interview now. The first author I would like to introduce is Christine McKenzie. The First Lady of the Library World, our IFLA president. A member of the Bertelsmann network, she has, according to Ton, become his Australian sister. She shared her views on libraries from a global perspective. I spoke with her a couple of days ago. And David, could you please start this segment? So, hi Christine, so nice to see you. How are you doing there?
I'm great, thank you. And how are you? I'm
fine. It's so neat to see each other now on this beautiful occasion of celebrating this spectacular book in which you contributed so beautifully. How do you like to contribute to this book?
Well, it was a great honour, Theo, to be invited to contribute to the book, to represent Ton's career and to look at a worldwide view of libraries. There's so many respected colleagues who contributed so as well, and so it's a real honour to be part of it, and I think it's a really important volume.
So how do you see the value of this book?
Well, I think it's unique because I don't know of anything that has captured in this moment in time a history of public libraries, and it's global. It's including a lot of countries. I must admit I haven't counted up all the libraries that have been contributing, but it's an amazing reporting of what's happening in libraries at this time, and in that way I think it's going to have a very important historical record.
It is an historical record. It's a huge scope which it covers. If we zoom into your contribution, what's the main topics? What are the main topics? What can people expect when they start reading your chapter?
Well, I was asked to do something on the trends in global libraries, and so I identified 10 trends that I think are important. Of course, in some countries, they're very much more developed in their library services than others, but I think that the trends that I identified are fairly universal, And it was an interesting thing to put it at this point in time. I think I guess we're always living in history, but we're living in a particularly interesting time in history. And last year, 2020, when you think we had the huge issue around climate change, and here in Australia, the bushfires, the terrible bushfires we had at the beginning of the year, there was all the social unrest around the Black Lives Matter movement, and then COVID on top of it. You know, it's been an incredible year, and I think to put all that into a context of libraries has been really interesting.
Yeah, you gave all these various perspectives in which libraries can contribute to this bizarre time, this roller coaster for all over the world. You know, it's not like.
That's right.
You especially covered a part of the world which hasn't been covered before, I guess, like Oceania. That's quite spectacular. I mean, they really are part of the global community now, aren't they?
Oh yes, of course. And our colleague Alison Dobie did a great job in gathering the stories of the libraries of Oceania that I'm sure have not been recorded before. So we've got a chapter on New Caledonia, on Fiji, on Timor-Leste, and Fiji. Did I say Fiji? Yeah, so it's a really, and New Zealand too, of course. So it's been really, as I said earlier, it's a unique contribution to the literature, this book.
Yeah. And if you look at the developments in Oceania, are there any parallels with other parts of the world? I mean, how do you see the global library developing, or the public libraries globally developing?
Well, you know, it's all about people, isn't it? And I was lucky enough to be involved in a library week discussion with the Fiji Library Association about a month ago, 2 months ago. And the passion and the enthusiasm and they know how important libraries are to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, the United Nations 2030 Agenda. They're right across that. And so I think and Fiji is a poor country and their libraries are very basic. But the librarians understand the value of libraries and they know how important libraries are to their communities and to their society moving forward. So yeah, well, it's been very heartwarming to be engaged with that work.
Yeah, and if you look at the value of public libraries in general now during COVID times, is there anything like are there any challenges there in Oceania or Australia? Are there differences in the world about this function of libraries in this time, or is it globally seen as?
Well, I think economically it's been interesting because some countries, and I think particularly of New Zealand, have put $60 billion into their libraries because of COVID. Here in Victoria, where I'm based, the government has put an extra money into libraries because they've seen the value of these community places in societies that now have to regroup and come back together and think about how they're going to move forward. And then other countries, perhaps it's not so positive. And so I guess, yes, I'm not sure what the reason is for the differing views. And I think many governments will say, oh yes, libraries are important, but I'm afraid that not all are investing in them to the same level.
Exactly. So even if governments do not invest in their libraries, it can be a rough time. It can become a rough time. Do you have, since we have to close now, any messages, any remarks, anything to say to your colleagues all over the world? I mean, as president of IFLA, you have this unique global view and this unique global position as well, both for the librarians as well as for the countries in which they serve.
Well, I think the last year has shown how libraries can pivot with the best of them. Libraries continue to adapt, and that's the trends that I talked about show how libraries have adapted. And I think we are adaptable, we're resourceful, we are creative, and we're passionately involved in our communities. So I feel very optimistic about the future of libraries. And I just urge everyone to keep making libraries best as they can be, and let's work together.
Let's work together. That's your beautiful.
Work together. Yes. And can I just say congratulations to Ton on a marvellous career, and particularly on coming up with this idea of creating this book. What a wonderful legacy for his career. So, yeah, well done, Ton. Well done, everyone.
My last questions to you, but thank you so much for joining us, and from all over the world. We thank you for your good work and your authority, and hope to see you soon live. If not in Rotterdam this year, it probably will be in Dublin next year, and maybe the year after in Rotterdam again.
That would be wonderful.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And see you soon.
Thanks, Theo. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Christine, again. This book is a remarkable cooperative effort of libraries from around the world. And it reflects the contributions of many. First, I would like to thank the sponsors whose contributions made it possible to have the book available in print. OCLC, it's the largest supplier of library automation systems in the Netherlands, kindly contributed to the cover of the book's design costs. We also thank them for the chapter by Saskia Levering and Scott Livingston with OCLC's perspective on the future of digitization in libraries. MBD Biblion, the national media provider for libraries in the Netherlands, was generous as well, both with advice and sponsoring printing the book for free. Thanks also to Nina Nannini, who describes the development of MBD Biblion services and the support they will give to libraries in an increasingly digitized future. The book would have been impossible without tremendous work of Diederik Slijkerman, board member of the Utrecht Public Library and co-editor. It was also he who suggested to make a book comprised of contributions, as a conference with speakers was impossible due to COVID. And equally important was Karen Telleman, who coordinated logistics and communications and served as the book's images chief. And the result we see here is the outstanding work of D2. This Bureau for Brand Design and Communication in Utrecht, a trusted partner of the library, has created an attractive book with allure. We thank Alison Doby for her role as liaison to colleagues in Oceania, Michael Awley for his expertise to the English language, and Priyanka Mohan for filling the gaps in the collection of illustrations. But most of all, we thank all 34 authors for the immediate willingness to share their stories in response to Ton's call and for generously sharing their experience, knowledge, and expertise. I would now like you to briefly unmute your microphone and to give them a big, big applause, and then of course, remute. So where is the applause now? Unmute and start clapping. This is a great sound. Thank you very much. Well, you have to unmute now, and if it's not done automatically, you have to be sure you unmute it. And thank you for that. Tom writes on page 21 of the book, and I quote, "I have great respect for all those librarians around the world who do their work at the most basic level to create reading and learning opportunity for everyone. The importance of this pioneering work is, for instance, reflected in contributions from authors from Oceania, Haiti by Elizabeth Pierre-Louis, and from Nepal. And it is with great pleasure I ask your attention for the author from Nepal, Sanjana Shrestha, currently residing in Melbourne, who is working for the READ Global Foundation, and with whom I had a conversation earlier this week. David, can you start a video? So, Sanjana, so nice to see you. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. So nice to see you, Theo.
How are you? So much. I'm fine. Here to Rotterdam. You're in
Melbourne now, yes.
It's the other side of the world. Isn't it great to have this talk together with all these other people listening and watching now from all over the world and celebrating this spectacular book. Well, Sanjana, you work for the Rural Education and Development Nepal, abbreviated as READ and READ Global. And you're a firm believer of the community-led development and the capacity of the communities to take charge of their own development. Can you tell us in a few sentences what READ is and why the relationship with public libraries is so important?
Yeah, READ, I joined READ in 2004. So since when I joined, what I have observed is READ is creating a platform for the community. It's a community space where everyone can come in, they can discuss, they can, discuss about their problem or whatever, and then they can design their own future. It's not like, the external people coming in there, but, providing them the platform so that they can, exercise their power, they can exercise their network, they can discuss about themselves. It's about building the community capacity. And then, they are the builder of their own future. It's like building their like, the empowerment of the community, and we provide the space for them. Yep.
And so the relationship with libraries is only space, or?
It's not only space, it's like the physical space where there will be a building, and then there's also the resources like the library section, full of books in Nepali. And then the children's section where they are like learning material for the kids. There is the women's section where there are materials for the women. Youth section, we have like the audiovisual section, and all the libraries, they have their own sustaining enterprise, because in Nepal, we don't have support from the government, and the community, they have to like think about planning by themselves, like how they can sustain their library, and each library is attached with at least one, what we call it, a sustaining enterprise. Yeah.
And in Nepal, I was reading, reading in itself is so important. Can you elaborate a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I mean, when I have to give you a scenario, I grew up with no libraries at all. I only had like access to the British Council Library at that time. When you talk about the history of education, it's very new, I would say. So at the beginning of 1950s, the education in Nepal was still an exclusive privilege of the wealthy elites. At that time, the literacy was like 5% only. Now the literacy percent is 68%, but only 49% of the women in Nepal are literate. So still now, like there are a lot of schools, they don't have libraries at all. And there are huge number of people who are newly literate. The education quality is quite low, and then reading skills is quite low. So that's where the value of library comes in. The responsibility of the library is not only like building the literacy, but also provide them the relevant material so that they can retain their literacy skills, and also provide them the platform so that they can use their literacy capacities, literacy skills and all. So it's very important for like for us to do the program on literacy in Nepal.
You describe in your book a methodology of the community building based on 4 aspects. Can you name the 4 aspects? I think the people have to read the book to have more in-depth experience, but please.
Yeah, so to go before that, I mean, I think I need to provide some of the background. So in Nepal, when we call like libraries, it's actually, when there is a challenge in the community, like the literacy challenge, when there is like the women is suffering, when there is like the livelihood, challenges, then community, start thinking about building the libraries, and they take library as a solution to, to address their challenges. So when we talk about building the libraries, READ Nepal, READ Global, they don't support like 100%. Certain percent of the community contribution need to be there, like at least 33% of the community contribution need to be there, and it goes up to like 50-60%. And the community, they raise contribution from each and every household for that library. Everyone is so much involved to build that library. And we do a lot of community engagement activities and all. And at the end, they do the fundraising, and it would take like 1 to 2 years to build the library. And at the end, they feel so proud to see the tangible outcome, the library. And, then they use this platform to do like different kind of activities to address the challenges. So that's how it is built. So during the process, you can see like, there's like a lot of community ownership. And IREX, they did research in READ Nepal libraries in 2018. So what they have found as a community capacity is, number 1, the community building, what you are saying. Number 1 is sense of community. Sense of community meaning like there's a sense of trust, there's a sense of community ownership, there's a support and building. And then, there's like when they do the fundraising activity and when they build the libraries, all the partner organization and stakeholders, they come together. So there's a kind of like increased connection. There's a teamwork, and it is like a safe space for everyone in the community. There's a space for everyone. When I went to one of the discussion in the community, we were like discussing, and women said like, to come to the library, we don't need to take permission of my husband. That's what the library is. So that is the sense of order, sense of community. And the other one is like the shared commitment. There is a willingness of the community to work together to for the common goal, to do the outreach to help each other. So there's a kind of shared commitment. Number 2 is shared commitment. And then number 3 is ability to solve problems. So we have 67 libraries in Nepal, but none of the libraries are owned by Read Nepal. There is a community leadership, and they do like, we build the capacity. We play the role as a, what do you call it, the midwife, helping the mother to, to give the birth of a child. And as it's actually the community who do all this kind of work. So they have ability to solve the problem whenever there is like a specific challenge they have to solve. They form like subcommittees, and then they work together. So they have the ability to solve the problem, and they are the decision maker. This is the third aspect that IREX has found. And the other one is access to external resources. Library cannot work in silo. There are like a lot of challenges in the community. There are like different kind of users, they have like different kind of need. And library do not have like resources for everyone in the community, but what library can do is they can bridge. They can say that, okay, you need this service, you can go here. So, the library have the capacity to access the external resources. And this is the fourth aspect that IREX has found during the evaluation.
People are eager to read your paper, and it's so spectacular, and the results are also so spectacular. So I really encourage our audience to pick up the book and start reading, especially your chapter. Do you see parallels with the library service in the Western countries, and can we learn something from Nepal? As a final question, it's kind of running out now, but it's important.
I learned, like, I was in contact with a lot of Western libraries, and they are doing a lot of great work. When I say, like, they are doing a lot of work for the community from Nepal. When you say, like, what can the Western libraries learn, I don't say that Western libraries is like, they are also doing great, we can learn from each other. But one aspect I would say is, like, if they work with the community, it's not like libraries agenda to the community, like, okay, we have this services for you, come and join. It's not like that, but have the community into the process of designing the program for them. So if, they can do that, that would be like awesome. That's what I feel.
Sanjana, thank you so much for this little talk, and I'm eager to meet you soon, somewhere in the world, alive, and have this.
Yeah, very much looking forward to it.
Thank you so
much for this opportunity. Yeah, it's great. Thanks.
Bye-bye, Sanjana.
Bye.
There are many chapters in the book dealing with library development in Western countries, Finland, Denmark, the Netherlands, the USA, for example. And who better to shine a light on this than Barbara Lison? She is the incoming IFLA president and puts the spotlight on Germany as an example. And now we probably join with Barbara. There she is. Hi, Barbara.
Yes, hi.
How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Bad weather, but good mood.
Great to see you again. Barbara, you are a city librarian in Bremen, and you describe 7 developments in libraries in Germany. Which of these is a typical German development?
Oh, to say typical is always very difficult, and this is a typical question. But I looked at these flashlights again, and I think at the moment, especially, flashlight number 6 is maybe not typically, but highly important, more important maybe than the just professional issues like digitization. It's the mission on support of democratic society. German libraries derive their function from the German Constitution, which is very important. And I think for a country with the history of Germany as well, and especially for a country with the presence of Germany where right-wing parties are getting into well, into the society, into the parliament back. We should not forget that the right-wing party now is the biggest opposition party in the German parliament and also in some of the parliaments of the states. So the democratic society and the support of the democratic society is really the hottest issue for libraries now. And of course, that means that a democratic society is dependent on well-educated and enlightened citizens. That is very important. And they only can be well-educated apart from school when they have free access to information and can make their own minds up and make their own decisions on how to position themselves in society. And of course, the last 4 years had several buzzwords. One of them was fake news. So it's not only information, it's also news, which is connected to information as well. And so libraries are now really engaged in helping people to understand what makes fake news and how to find the right way in finding not the truth, but reality. Let's put it like that.
Yeah. If you compare these 7 developments, what makes them, for instance, different from the examples given by, for instance, Sue Sutherland from New Zealand or Suzanne Payette from Canada?
Well, I think these countries have a different democratic tradition than Germany. Really, they have not really experienced what we have experienced in the 20th century. The terror of the Nazi dictatorship, the 2 Germanys of the 2 worlds, actually. So there's something different. And when I read especially these articles, I thought that, which is nothing very far away from Germany, is the stress on the indigenous matter in New Zealand. I mean, they have wonderful libraries, they have a wonderful concept of libraries, and we heard just that they got a lot of money for developing the libraries. But indigenous matters in Germany, apart from Bavaria, maybe, I don't know, we really don't have that issue so much. So that is one crucial difference. And the other thing when it comes to Canada and to Suzanne's wonderful article about the Canadian situation, I think what Canada has already as experience, we are now experienced in a very high way. So it's not really a difference, but we start doing this. That is the inclusion of new persons. And this is something where the libraries have a crucial role. And Suzanne describes this in her article, and I think we can learn a lot from her.
Yeah, absolutely. You are involved in many roles in the global development of libraries. Which of these 7 is the most universal in a way? And do you see also very different countries like India, as described by Bashir Ahmad Shafar, and the Netherlands is portrayed by Erik Boekenstein and Jos de Bij?
Well, I don't say digitization because this is so clear, so self-evident. I think diversity is the most universal one. And there is no real contradiction between the digitization and diversity. But I started with diversity because our surveys for IFLA, they show that our colleagues are so much interested in diversity, in serving diversity in their respective countries through their libraries, but also in the diversity of being represented in like a global organization like IFLA. So I think diversity is an important stream of thinking and of course an important stream of acting that is important. And diversity does not mean having a diverse clientele, patrons, but also having diverse access to information. So it comes back to the access to information, and digitization surely is a possibility to have access or to give access to information for diverse citizens, for diverse people. So that is a mixture, maybe not. First of all, I thought it's a contradiction, but it's not. It's a mixture. And I think the report from India and also from the Netherlands show the practical approach how to do this. And the Indian idea of having people read, give them literacy with the reading missions, which is described in this article through the Indian Public Library movement, is really highly important. And it is also a good example, even for countries like ours, how people can try to get into the population very deeply with their goals and with their missions. Yeah. In the Netherlands, of course, that's from the German point of view always one of the very, very best practice countries. Yes. Here's to you. The embracing of the vulnerable groups, which is planned more forcefully in the Netherlands, is something which is, I think, also important when it comes to diversity, because unfortunately most of the vulnerable groups have a relationship with the issue of diversity. So that these efforts taken in the Netherlands are really highly important. And I like the quote, "The library is a hybrid organization for the needs of all citizens." This also shows the diversity aspect of our work.
Thank you so much, Barbara. There are many more questions to be asked, but we're kind of running out of time. So I'd like to thank you for your contribution. People must read your part. It is giving a global view and also reflecting on a lot of issues in Germany. So Barbara, thank you very much for this wonderful talk.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Enjoy.
Oh, we are, thank you. The book provides a unique opportunity for reflection on a career spanning local, national and international work in libraries. And to share more about this, we'll now have a talk with the man of the hour, Ton van Vlimmeren. There he is. Hi, Ton. Thank you so much for this generous gift to the libraries of the world and through them to the communities empowered by the libraries. You have been part of the library world for at least 20 years. How do you look back on these years?
Well, first, I like to thank you for your kind words and also all the other people in the chat for, all their compliments. And I must say that when I look back in the 90s, we had a conversation. Some colleagues said, the libraries are like the Titanic. We are still doing our job. We are playing the orchestra, but we can feel the cold of the iceberg already, and soon we will be gone. Well, if I look back now on 25 years of librarianship, nothing of that has come true. You could say that we learned well from Charles Darwin that it's the most adaptable species that will survive. And I think that libraries did, with sometimes pain and a lot of effort and hard work and trial and error, did their best to innovate their services and be relevant to their communities. And that is something that is often underestimated, how big the change is. That in the 90s, colleagues were clipping newspaper articles and putting them in paper folders as sources of information on Teams. And well, we can't imagine now that these things were done in those days. But we now interact with citizens in the community to create knowledge and understanding of the world. And that is really an amazing journey in 25 years. And we have become multifunctional organizations. We still do this circulation of books and reading programs, but we also execute the other of the 5 functions of libraries David Lankes describes. And I think that is a very big change. And most of all, I think it's now much more fun to work in the library with all the potential there is and the range of activities and the range of human beings you can encounter there. So
Well, I'm so glad you mentioned Darwin, my great hero as a biologist, you know, evolution biologist. But in the many discussions we had, not only about Darwin, but also over the years about libraries, you always emphasized the value of worldwide networks, a global view on our work, and how can local libraries with local problems, local funding, and local challenges benefit from a global perspective? What message do you want to give us?
Well, I think there is a lot of similarities in the library world. I was struck some 20 years ago when Sue Sutherland from New Zealand explained some issues concerning training of staff there. And I thought this is almost the same as what we experience, and we could exchange and cooperate on solutions to work on that. But I would say that the main message I would have now is that libraries don't have to be shy. There is a saying, show, don't tell. Libraries work very hard to show, but they should be, well, when you look at the contributions in this book and you see the great value they have for the communities and how flexible and innovative are, they should not only do and show, but they should also tell. So I would like to freely quote, because it's not the just way she has put it in her chapter, our wonderful colleague Marie Oostergaard, when she was saying that it's now time for libraries to show courage and in their doing, and dare to speak out loud about the great building force that libraries have for the community. So, well, let me put it in another way. From the colleagues in Riga, I learned, they said, if we wait until all conditions are just, we never get started. So let's do it.
Let's do it now. The readers of the book also can find out that at some point you left the library field, but you came back. Why? Nostalgia?
No, it was not nostalgia. It's well, I just said working in libraries is so much fun. And if you look at, certainly from the perspective of a director, there is a vast range of topics that you can work on, from operations and logistics to rescuing the world. That is our mission, you could say. And that is an inspiring opportunity to well, to show your talents, to try to show them, and also to learn every day new things. And in libraries, the external end, that is, why do you do this and for who do you do this, is so visible, and that makes it also very satisfying. So we all have the experience that people are queuing before the library, in front of the library, before we open up, eager to get to our services. And also in, for example, the oral history, all the stories told by immigrants, by refugees, by children, or, well, almost everyone, how libraries made a difference in their lives. Well, that makes a library an exciting place to work. So that was the reason I came back.
Thank you so much, Tom. Thanks for this inspiring talk. And the book you gave us, it will be a joy for all the listeners now. We will talk later in the session a bit more about the future. Not only in North America, but around the world, librarians are inspired by David Lankes. He's a great teacher and a trend watcher for the library profession and a worldwide authority on the subject of library communities and community librarians. And I hope, yeah, there is David. Hi, David.
Hello.
Nice seeing you there. Thanks for joining us from the other side of the world. Your contribution, David, is called "The Library as a Movement," a quote from ARU's director, Marie Oostergaard. We have recently seen a divided United States and the use of information being crucial across that divide. Do you think libraries can play a role in healing the gap between people in our country, or in your country?
Yeah, it's been very fun to be a United States citizen and watch an insurrection at the Capitol. It is a rather humbling experience and frankly an infuriating experience. But absolutely, when you look at a lot of factors, from who people trust to where conversations are occurring, what you see is as you go from the national and you get more and more local, you see an increase in trust, you see an increase in cooperation, collaboration, you see an increase in responsibility and shared responsibility. And so when you look across and say, what distributed force across the country, across the world, has the ability to bring people together across a divide that is dedicated to learning? And Barbara, I'm going to steal your comment about a shared reality, which I think is a much more useful thing than talking about what is the truth and such. It's really what people look at. There are very few, if any, organizations that can do that within the United States, and I think globally. I mean, you don't go to the fire station and the police station to have a conversation about democracy. You don't necessarily, when you're in schools, there's a lot of work on sort of getting information, learning information, evaluating it, and there isn't this ability to truly just follow your passions and your discussions. And librarians, over what we've seen, and once again, this book does brilliantly demonstrating, is that the librarians are dedicated to facilitating these conversations, not informing, not shoving information down, not propagandizing, but saying, let's figure out where we want to go and how do we get there through empowerment, through literacy, and through all these things. And so really, it's one of the few organizations we have left globally that can begin to bring together the right and left wing, the different ideologies, and find out what we need to move forward.
Yeah. You stated that libraries are not neutral, but libraries should not become political agents as well. So how can they deal with this? Is the program for the Free Library in Philadelphia, as described by Shaban Reard, an example of this?
Absolutely. I mean, if you look at so if I could just take a moment to pause and just give an enormous amount of gratitude to Ton and putting this together, not only for his career, but as an author, you've just saved me a year's worth of research. So I plan on stealing everything within here. Thank you very much. That's the old joke, which is, if you take my ideas, it's stealing. If I take them, it's inspiration. So you've inspired me greatly. The article about the Free Library of Philadelphia, and Saban, who I know is on here, and once again, a huge amount of respect for the work she's done. It's a perfect example. It says, we saw needs for nutrition information. We saw needs for education and literacy. We saw a need, and rather than sitting back and say, well, we'll wait till they come in and then we'll have them ask what they need, it was a proactive discussion about how do we go and engage these communities. That's not a neutral act. When you begin to define what makes a community better by their nutrition, by their learning, by their understanding, by their incorporation, and not just within the main library, but throughout all of the communities, that's not a neutral act. It's not, it is a political act in the sense that politics is the distribution of power, but it's not an ideological one. It's not a right-wing idea or a left-wing idea or a Republican idea or a Christian Democrat idea. It's a good idea. And so that's and I think what you see throughout this entire book, and we can talk about community-based librarianship and the community foundation, but really this entire book is about activism. It is about librarians taking a proactive and active role in engaging their communities, seeing what they want and how to make it better, seeing the power of the local resources. We just heard about what's going on in Nepal, and energizing them and providing a foundation for doing that. And someone put in the discussion that Maria is their library hero. She is mine as well. This idea that really crystallized is, it's a movement. It is the idea of energizing people towards a common good. And that is a verb, and that is a motion, and that is not neutral, and that is engagement. But that is very different from saying that we are somehow some ideological pawn. It is the idea of saying we have values. We make them very transparent. We work against them. And by God, we're going to make tomorrow better.
Together we're so big. So yes, that's very important. Rolf Happel, in his contribution, states, few organizations are better suited than public libraries to be facilitators of informed community engagement processes. Can I invite you to reflect a bit on that?
Absolutely. And the interesting part is that there's a danger here. So I mean, I've talked a little bit about already that libraries need to engage communities and move them forward. But I want to be really clear that there is a potential danger here, which is we take on too much, that librarians feel that they've got to do it all. And once again, looking throughout this book in the different chapters, the things that clearly demonstrates is a partnership not just with the community, but other community organizations, with the private sector, with the nonprofit sector, that we can't do it alone. And that the fear is that we'll become the last community good organization standing. And people will look to us to do everything from taxes to reading, et cetera. And we can't do that all well. Librarians, and I train them. I don't train them to literally do everything. I train them to connect resources, which is connecting people and connecting knowledge. And it's back to that idea of what connective tissue is there left in organizations when businesses are seeking profit, which is what they do. That's not a negative comment. When government seeks to allocate resources and do it around ideological spectrum, which is how we've set up that system. When you look at different public organizations for caring for the common good and common health, there are very few organizations whose entire mission is to stitch together local communities and do it in a way where they're trusted to do that. And so what I would say is there are a few organizations better suited than public libraries to facilitate informal community engagement. Yes, because there are few organizations more dedicated to knowledge and more open to connecting across resources, regardless of, whether a .com, .org, or .gov. How do they help the community get better?
Yeah, we like to think as libraries as platforms as well, which reflects a lot of your thoughts. You're a teacher, you just said that. Should your students read this book, and has the chapter of June Garcia on leadership to be the first?
That's an excellent chapter. I really enjoyed June's, and what I took out of June's piece was like one sentence, but to me was very important, which was, no one's going to teach you this in library school. And there's a lot of stuff that we don't teach people in library school, because the idea that you can learn, Ton might want to comment on this, the idea that you're going to learn everything you need to know in a 25-year career in 2 years at the beginning is ridiculous. And so the political aspects, the administrative aspects, the management aspects, those are important. Yes, this is crucial, because I think a lot of people on this conversation are part of, once again, a movement. My article talks about these sort of waves of how we conceptualized and thinking, including a lot of work that Rolf has done. From we collect materials and we're a warehouse to this idea. This is a fundamental shift. I mean, and it's happened amongst ourselves, and it's happened at such a pace that it's almost, if you step back for a moment, it's breathtaking that when we talk about libraries as communities and corporations and bringing them together and centered on communities, and the idea that libraries can do cooking classes, and the idea that that all fits within the mission. Imagine if we got together 20 years ago and talked about this. We wouldn't use any of those words. We would talk about how we inform people and we collect people and we deal with deficits. I mean, that's the other thing. I love this book. This book is not about deficits. This book is not about our poor communities can't read and they don't have access to information. Oh, we're sorry for them. Let's go save them. This entire book is about our communities are the most powerful force for democracy, for education, for learning at the grassroots level. And by God, we're going to go do it. And whether that's in Nepal or whether that's in New Caledonia, whether that's in anywhere, that's what this book is. And so, yes, not only my students need to read it, but every librarian needs to read it, because it shows that globally, we are a big family that has made a big change, and it's having a really positive impact.
It's the book for the lifelong learning librarian.
Yeah. And I try to write those, and I failed. So it's a good job.
It's a perfect compliment to your books as well. David, thank you very much for your contribution. Very inspiring. Hope to talk to you soon again.
Thank you.
And let's continue with Oblida. Tom, you all know that. Bye-bye, David. Tom is president of Oblida, the European Library Association, and Giuseppe Vitello, I have to say, is the director of Oblida and has both a broad experience and perspective on what is happening or should happen in European libraries. Hi, Giuseppe. You have to unmute yourself. There you are. Almost perfect. Not yet. Yep, there you, no, do it again. You pressed the button again. So there you are. Now you're unmuted. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Good morning.
What are, after listening and reading all to this, the biggest opportunities for libraries in Europe at this moment?
Well, I would say that there is one opportunity, because this opportunity includes them all. And this is the European 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. We at LIDA, we refocused our activities in mid-2019, and we took, in a way, a risk. But then, when we started to see the program of the European Commission, the new European Commission with Ursula von der Leyen, then we found out that actually sustainable development was at the core of all activities of the European Union. And it is also at the core of this Next Generation EU, the European Union Structural Investment Funds. Actually, sustainable development is a theme that is transversal to all European programs. And I think that libraries, however big or small they may be, they should think now big and be ready to make the most out of the European Union opportunities. And this does not only concern libraries which are in the European Union area, but also libraries that are out of the European Union, because there are plenty of programs for them, for instance, like the Interreg program. I mean, this is perhaps technical, but I find that this crisis has been, of course, very severe, but the European Union reacted well, and there are many, many opportunities at the moment.
Perfect. Giuseppe, in the book, there are contributions of, for example, developments on a smaller national scale, like those of Catherine Lau from Singapore and Abir Al-Kawari from Qatar. What is the added value of a European approach? And is that too complicated and less effective than a national approach?
Well, first, let me say a few things about the contribution from Qatar and Singapore, because this is very interesting. I mean, these would be typical European states, Singapore with its 5 million inhabitants, yes. But it's true that libraries now are starting to look all alike, but the thinking behind the planning or the national development of the development of libraries at national level may be totally different. And in fact, in Qatar, all revolved around the experience of the Al-Kutub, which was a kind of a spiritual center, you know, for this development. Whereas in Singapore, they took a more dispersed approach, and they really looked one after the other of the areas in which the national development, library national development should be carried out. And well, now if I go to the European Union, I think that the question is perhaps should be reformulated in a different way, and in the way on why. In fact, the European Union is so little present in libraries. I mean, we estimated that in the 90s, at the end of so last century, in the 90s, for every euro that was spent by the European Union in libraries, there were 1,000 euro that was spent by national governments. So it's a figure that is really ridiculous, and one should really ask why libraries, why EU support to libraries is so small in relation to the support that is that other cultural institutions like cinema or museums are benefiting. So I think this is the right question, and we should really work in order to have more European Union money invested in libraries.
Exactly. Good point. Maya Berendsen from the European Public Library Buildings. including Odi, the Helsinki Library, that is the book thanks to Anna Maria Soniavara. Is there a special European trend in library buildings? And what does it reflect on how libraries are developing?
Well, I mean, I was very interested by these two articles. You know, at the end of the 90s, there was this idea that libraries should enlarge the spectrum of their collections. And in fact, probably the most apparent illustration for this was the movement, the French movement of Mediathèque. They changed the name. Yeah. They were no longer bibliothèque, so book, but they were Mediathèque, plenty of media. So the focus was on the focus was on the new media. But these two contributions, okay, they are both Finnish in a way. Well, Maya is Finnish, we know that. They are both Finnish, and of course, the reference is to the Odi library. But there is one illustration in the contribution made by Maya, which is a stair, just a stair. And you say, what is this stair for? It's because she illustrates by that, you know, this the fact that there was this idea that you would ascend to the knowledge. And now, in fact, the knowledge is horizontal. In the contribution of about the Odi library, there was a lot of attention paid to each room, and in particular also to the toilet. And the fact that the space in libraries was so much studied and analyzed really illustrates the fact, and you can see in the titles and the subtitles, yes, this is the illustration. Sorry, I should have perhaps shown it. But the fact that, you know, look at the titles and subtitles of this book, Hub, Movement. So it all says about people flows, it all says about users. And in fact, now the legislation in Finland and Norway is already about libraries as meeting places. And I think these movements, in libraries, library architecture in the Netherlands, Denmark, and the Nordic countries, they are pioneering, they are opening new ways, and European libraries will soon follow up.
Thank you. One short question and a short answer. Alona Kirsch has a pledge for more and more professional advocacy in libraries. What could European libraries gain by having more advocacy in Brussels at the heart of Europe?
Yeah, I think this article is very interesting because it shows how advocacy, lobbying, actually advocacy and lobbying, are interchangeable according to Ilona. Are so important for libraries, and how it is also a professional job. Exactly. She talks about timing, she talks about knowledge. I mean, it's really an art, and really not everybody can do that, although she says the idea of the advocacy should spread among all library staff. However, having said that, I would also say that the best advocacy is the more money for libraries, more visibility for libraries at national level. And this can be done only if libraries can show that they are structurally important for the communities they refer to. And this is the reason why Blida, for instance, is now focusing on the European structural investment funds. And this is why we are providing all kinds of support for libraries to make the most out of these European programs.
Giuseppe, thank you so much for your contribution.
Thank you very much.
And hope to see you soon. And go on with the great work with Ablida.
Thank you.
We'll now shift our focus from Europe to South America, a vast continent with many libraries and a great diversity of communities. I have the pleasure now of speaking with Gonzalo Oyarzun, whose chapter provides very rich insights into the state of libraries in Latin America. Gonzalo, the subtitle of the book is The Heart of the Community Around the World. Is, in your opinion, the Library of South America the house of a community?
Yes, but first, please, I want to say thank you to Tom. Thank you for invitation to participate in this book, in this great book with these great colleagues writing around the world. Yes, still. For my experience, many of them are, especially with the libraries from from big cities. In many of these places, the library are the only place to access to culture, education, and technologies.
Mm-hmm.
For example, when I was writing in the chapter of the Cancuaca Community Library, the director, Saul Desmentes, said me that they need to close the library about COVID
Mm-hmm.
the last year.
Yeah.
And he said me that it doesn't matter. It's not really important because the library is working on streets, on gardens, in the house of the community, because in the same idea of Professor Lankes, that the library is built community, Soldes said me that the library isn't the community, in the heart of the community.
Exactly.
And this is the reply.
Yeah, perfect. You described more specific the founding of a library in Sao Paulo in Brazil on a ground with dramatic history. You mentioned a few aspects that helped the library to bring dignity back to the people. Can you reflect a bit short on that?
Yeah, it's true. The place where born the São Paulo's libraries, both.
Mm-hmm.
They are places of related with horror, misery, and neglect.
Mm-hmm.
However, many people work in these areas, in these libraries. Adriana Ferrari and many other people working right now, like Pierre is in the meeting, and they become the place of hope on democracy and freedom.
Mm-hmm.
It's the bridge that rebuild social connection, both São Paulo Public Library and Villalobos Public Library. And today they are great space that the people, the community enjoy and use a lot.
Yeah. You describe also, like colleagues like as Vicky McDonald, how libraries respond to COVID. It's a strange question, but is the pandemic a blessing in disguise for library development? And is it difficult to boost, or what is that to say?
Sounds strange, but you know, the COVID has a tremendous opportunity for digital libraries.
Mm-hmm.
In Chile, for example, the Digital Public Library increased their loans a lot. The loans a lot. It's the biggest public library right now, lending books.
Yeah.
Just in this aspect. But I have another exceptional example in Latin America. Is the National Library of Peru.
Yeah.
They did a really big switch with the pandemic. You know, the national libraries are really traditional, formal places for work with heritage and researchers, but they close the door and they become a very well connected with the citizens, working a lot, bringing books with like, I don't know, Uber or other delivering food. Here they are delivering books.
Yes.
And they talk, they read books, many other experience, bringing culture, education, economic aspect, and a really big work that the team of Esioneda, the director of this library, and all the team working not just for millions of Peruvians, is for Latin American in general, people in general.
Yeah, it's so important. Gonzalo, you already mentioned a little bit about heritage, but like Kakaito Kasi and Caspar Freitas and Lauren Pei, Christopher Augius and Alison Dobby have written about developments in a cultural diverse Oceania, where some of these cultures are threatened. Do libraries in South America play an important role in the preservation of cultural diversity?
Yes, I think in general in Latin America,
Mm-hmm.
libraries have a huge potential to preserve and spread cultural diversity of our region. The example in the book is the Guatemala Community Library Network. It's a really big network in Guatemala, in Honduras too. They are a little bit connected by a foundation, a Rican Foundation, and this network is called Within Wisdom, and it's really gorgeous, a tremendous experience that I invite to you and all the audience to read the book.
That's a great invitation. We all have to read the book. Thank you so much, Gonzalo, for this talk. Hope to see you soon, somewhere in South America, my favorite continent to visit. Love Brazil. Thank you so much. The primary
Thank you, Theo.
Thank you. The primary focus of the book is on public libraries and how they serve the communities. Buhle Mbambo Tata is the librarian of the National University of Lesotho. Let's hear from Buhle about developments in the south of Africa for academic libraries. Hi Buhle, nice to see you.
Lovely to see you too.
So sweet of you to join us. What are the greatest challenges for academic libraries in Southern Africa in these days, these years actually? Are they different from those in public libraries?
Well, these days is COVID-19.
Yeah.
But generally over the years, the problems of libraries is fairly similar for academic libraries and public libraries. But what makes the difference is that the academic library's mandate is limited to the research focus of a university, whereas that of public libraries is for the community. And so the challenges differ because of the populations served. But they overlap as in any libraries, like Sanjana was mentioning Nepal. She could have been talking about any libraries in library in Southern Africa, the challenges of the digital infrastructure, the challenges of access to resources, and COVID has highlighted that. Mm-hmm. But also given a number of libraries an opportunity to do things differently, but also exposed to the inequalities. While libraries that are able and well-resourced have been able to cope with the COVID challenge, those without have exposed the challenges of the digital divide. And so while the digital content is an answer, for many libraries, radio, and for many communities, radio has become the answer. So COVID is our challenge, but digital content is an answer for academic places, but for public libraries, digital divide makes digital solutions not always a workable one.
Yeah, you have been like Tom and other authors like Spaska Tarandova or Andrea Telly involved in the work of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and the work of the Gates Foundation is portrayed in this book by Jessica Dorr and Deborah Jacobs. What has the Gates Foundation brought to libraries in Africa?
Yes, it is lovely to see so many people that we're connected with through the work of the Gates Foundation. Spaska, Hani, Rolf, Alison, June. I've left some out, but so many of us, Tom, we're connected through that work. But the work of the Gates Foundation in Africa is mentioned and quoted in the chapter by Deborah and Jessica, and highlights just where the work of the Gates Foundation and Africa's aspirations came together. And that was investing in young people and investing in Africa's future, which is with its young people. The Gates Foundation funded a number of programs in Africa. Started, it funded as became a common service. But over the years, the Gates Foundation, through the Global Libraries Program, funded programs that develop and aspire young librarians. The INELI SAF, INELI Southern Africa program, the African Leadership Academy program, and the Trailblazers that they talk about so well in their chapter. And all those programs have helped us to see just how much, as June says, how much post-university programs and leadership programs teach you new things. Yeah. So the African Leadership Academy, INELI, Trailblazers taught these young people, young librarians, new ways of doing business. So you could see them moving from just providing a regular library service to providing libraries that impact their communities, to services that are excellent in their communities. And you could see the impact of training from when they started to when they complete. So the work that the Gates Foundation did in Africa through the Global Libraries Program has left a lasting legacy. And for me, having worked closely with them in the African Library Summit series, that really galvanized the whole continent into working together to develop libraries. I'm grateful that our paths crossed, but that we were able to do so much work on the continent together and met so many wonderful people in the process. Libraries, Africa's libraries were never the same once the Gates Foundation came in.
Perfect. That's a good quote. In the Netherlands, the Royal Library has since 6 years a supporting and servant role to the public libraries as described by Erik Boekenstein and Jos de Bij. That is not the case in many other countries. You describe national libraries as development agencies. What do you mean by that, and what do you expect from them?
Yeah, I think a lot of what Erickson described also happens was expected from national libraries. Sometimes we call, particularly in South Africa, we call our national library, we refer to our national library as the soul of the nation, because that's where the memory of the nation is deposited. But we see them as development agencies because they are government agencies, and they often are the ones that help libraries connect with a national development plan. So they have a responsibility to ensure that libraries deliver on their mandate of development. And the National Library of South Africa and the Kenya National Library Services have some excellent programs, as I say, indicate in the book, that speak to some of the things that Spaska speaks about that they do in their libraries, as well as Sanjana, things that, programs that take communities, the needs of the community, and are reflected by what the library provides. The reading programs, the digitization programs that take young people with straight from college and gives them an opportunity to learn and do, and then let them off again back into the community. So both the KNLS Library and the National Library of South Africa, as development agencies, do that so well. But as Giuseppe has just indicated, also for Africa, the national libraries have a responsibility of delivering on the Africa We Want, which is a program of the African Union, and also on the UN Sustainable Development. And in both South Africa and Kenya, the national libraries coordinate those international work as well as the African Union work. So we see them as development agencies because they have a responsibility to coordinate, but also to lead the development role of libraries in their countries.
So, Bogle, so thank you so much for this answer. I agree with you. You're the last person to be interviewed today, and I have to ask you for a short answer though, but how did you experience being involved in writing this book?
It was exhilarating, and I was honored to have been asked. I almost asked why me? But it was really an honor to have been asked, and such a privilege. My difficulty was in choosing what to write about, because I could have written about so many exciting things about libraries in Africa. But it was just so exciting to write about two pillars of African librarianship. And it was a pity that I could include all the photos, lovely photos of young people working across the continent, but it was such an exhilarating process. I was delighted to have been involved. And I wondered at some point, would the conference been as good as the book? But I think the book is a lasting impression and we will all get to keep it. So thank you very much for asking me to contribute. And on behalf of Africa's libraries, thank you for including us. And all the best, Ton, as you retire.
Bogle, thank you for your contribution. Thank you for this talk. It was wonderful to have you online with us now, and it's very inspiring. We are, in effect, approaching the end of this session, and I thank you all for your attention, especially those who have gotten up in the middle of the night to be here with us. I assure you, there could have been many, many other conversations with colleagues from around the world with diverse and interesting stories. You are invited to read them in the book, now available online for free on the website of the Utrecht Public Library. And of course, that's www.bibliotheekutrecht.nl. You'll find it, of course. And for those among you who understand Dutch, you can also send an email to klantenservice@bibliotheekutrecht.nl. But at the end, we show you the URL on screen, so don't panic. If anyone wants to get in contact with one of the speakers today or with the authors in the book, you all know the email address of Tom. He will be happy to help you. On the website, you also will find the video registration of this book presentation. Now, I would like to ask Tom for some closing remarks. Tom, where are you?
I'm here.
There he is.
Thank you, Theo, for the word. I see we ran out of time, and I prepared about 30 minutes of closing remarks.
That's not true.
That's not gonna happen. But I would like to thank all the people who put comments in the chat, and for all the compliments. And of course, it is as it has been in my career. It's not me who has done this book. This book has been done by so many wonderful colleagues. And like Bogle was surprised, she was asked, I was surprised that when I asked people, do you want to contribute, that everyone right away said, oh, what a great idea. And they took all the time needed and all the corrections and all the things, they took it for granted. So I think this is a great example of how the library world works. It is sharing, it's cooperating and bringing us together forward. My chapter in the book has the title, A Privileged Job. And I feel and felt a privileged person to be able to do this and to be able to work with the team of the Utrecht Library. And we heard a lot of things about sustainable development goals and about democracy, etc. But what I am most proud of is that when you look at the program of the Utrecht Library, or you can take another library in another country, you can see that these high over policy terms like sustainable development goals, that they are reality in the library. Mm-hmm. We have this talk show on poverty. We have an exhibition on hunger last year. We do really empower vulnerable elderly citizens in our community. We support school kids with their school career, and especially now in this difficult times. So you can see that what is in the policy and in the big words of like sustainable development goals, it comes true, and that makes me very proud that I've been part of that. I think if I listen well to what everyone is saying, we succeeded in what we wanted to do when we ventured out on this book adventure, we wanted to create a kind of bouquet with a lot of flowers, and that everyone could pick something to her or his taste. And well, if I'm listening well, I think we succeeded in that, and that makes me very happy. And most of all, I thank all the wonderful colleagues that I was happy to meet during the years, and whom I stayed in touch. I thank them for the inspiration, the experience they shared, but most of all for your friendship. And I hope and trust we will continue on that for a while. So thank you all. And last but not least, I want to thank you, Theo, for hosting this well, rather complex session. I think time is not your first thing. We are running out a bit, but you have done marvelous. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Tom, for your generous words. It was a great pleasure and honor for all of us to contribute to this presentation. And I'm sure I speak for the authors as well to contribute to this unique book. I also want to thank David van Toor, Elsken Schenk and Karen Telleman for organizing this presentation. And again, do visit the website to get your free digital copy. And I guarantee you many hours of fascination, hope, and inspiration. Thank you all very much for joining us. Stay healthy. Hope to see you as soon as possible and enjoy the book. Bye-bye.